Hello.
Hello.
Hello, and good afternoon to those of you who are in the afternoon hours, and good evening to those of you who are in the evening hours. Welcome to this wonderful live reading with Alecia McKenzie. We'll also be having a discussion, and I'm very happy that you are here. I am Dr. Isis Samaj Hall. I specialize in Caribbean literature, and I welcome you on behalf of my department, the Department of Literatures and English here at the University of the West Indies, Mona campus. Thank you to everyone all around the world. Thank you for joining us today. Now, as many of you might know, UWI Mona's Department of Literatures and English is the birthplace of the study of West Indian literature. We are champions of creative expression in print and film, pioneers in the analysis of Jamaican popular culture, and shapers of Caribbean intellect. Our dedication to the literary arts led us to introduce a writing, literature, and publishing program so that we can do our part to nurture and grow future Caribbean authors, poets, editors, and publishers. Our strong tradition of centering West Indian literature, poetry, drama, film, and music has consistently attracted undergraduates, postgraduates, scholars, and artists from across the university, the region, and the globe. Just as we are doing today, our department regularly hosts poetry and novel readings, as well as book launches, public colloquium, distinguished lectures, and international conferences. I say this all so you can understand why it brings me so much immense pleasure to have this conversation with author Alecia McKenzie. Alecia McKenzie is a Jamaican writer with 6 books to her name. She won Commonwealth Literary Prizes for both her first collection of short stories, Satellite City, and for her novel, Sweetheart. Sweetheart has not only been enjoyed in the Anglophone regions of the world, it has also been translated into German and French and was awarded the 2017 Prix Cabet des Lycées. Maybe my French was so-so. Mackenzie's other publications include Stories from Yard, first published in Italian translation as Racconti Giamaicani, Doctor's Orders, When the Rain Stopped in Natland, and most recently, the text we'll be centering today, A Million Aunties, which was longlisted for the 2022 Dublin Literary Award. It is published by Blue Banyan, Akashic and Dialogue Books. Mackenzie's poetry has appeared in a range of journals, including The Caribbean Writer and Metamorphoses, and her stories have also been published in anthologies such as Stories from Blue Latitudes, the Oxford Book of Caribbean Short Stories, Global Tales, and Girls In. She has edited 2 collections of short stories and was longlisted for the Sunday Times Audible Short Story Award in 2019. Welcome to you, Alecia. I hope that my enthusiasm is clear.
Thank you for that introduction, Isis. And
No problem.
I loved your Italian, by the way.
Oh,
Perfect.
thank you. I tried. I tried. Now let's just say, audience, please be so kind and share any comments that you have during the readings, and any questions that you might have in the YouTube comment space. We will be monitoring that space and bringing those questions into discussion here. So that Q&A is going to happen probably in about a half an hour. So for now, I want everyone to turn up their volumes on their devices so that you can listen in and listen keenly. Alecia, if it's okay, are you ready to give us a little orientation into A Million Aunties?
Okay, yeah, sure. So, it's a book told from various points of view. And it's set in Jamaica, in New York, in Paris. And I think each chapter each chapter has its own title, right? And perhaps each chapter could work as a short story. Each chapter could stand on its own as well. But this is a story about an artist who goes home, or to his mother's home in Jamaica, and things. He finds a community, he finds a family. He's suffering from, he's had a tragedy in his life, and so he's experiencing loss. And all the people he meets seem to be experiencing some kind of loss or grief. And we see how they interact and how they kind of support one another, if I can say that.
For sure. So maybe while you read, maybe I'll provide you with a bit of accompaniment. How does that sound?
Thank you.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Our new international band. So here we go. So I will start with chapter 11, right?
Okay.
Which is titled The Trees. And this is told from the point of view of one of the characters called, she's called Miss Miss Vera. She's called Miss Vera. I always forget the characters, Anyway.
How could you? I will never forget them. They live in my head.
Okay, so Miss Vera, I'll just start from the beginning of this chapter. I want to think it is over now, but I know the weather just playing with me. The downpour start again before I can say, "Wear me umbrella," and the wind making the trees bend left and right like a spite. I feel sorry for them. We can have some music now, Isis. Standing proud one minute, as if them going to be there forever, and the next swaying and shaking like them have no will at all. Nothing to do but wait it out. 3 days cooped up in the house. The first day, I sit at the machine and work on the 2 dress them that I'm making for Miss Della. She need them for when she go traveling next month, she said. First, she going to New York to see Stephen. And then after that is big trip, because Stephen taking her to France, to Paris. What a excitement. She asked me if I can take care of the house and all the dog them while she gone. And I say, of course, no problem. Miss Della is the one who begged me to make the dress them, because although I sick of sewing, nobody can buy in a store what I know how to make. It would have cost them nearly a whole month's wages. When I finished with hemming the dress, I decided to do some housework. So I dust everything, even on top of the fridge. And I clean the stove and wipe all the grease from the wall tiles until them shining like new. Hard to believe how high grease can fly. I scour the bathroom sink after that and want to start on the tub, but I'm getting too tired and my shoulders start hurting like hell. Still, the house look damn good now, and I'm proud of myself, because cleaning is another thing I kind of let slip. The second morning, I look outside and see the tree dump on the ground like dead body, and Lord God Almighty burst from my mouth. I go out on the veranda and wave my hand to Lorraine across the way, who also looking upon the destruction. After the landslide last year, it's like bad luck just can't done. Lorraine raised up her arm then like she asking, what to do? The rain still coming down, and Lorraine probably worried about Miss Della nursery down the road. Every time flood and hurricane come, she have to start over with all the plant again. I sigh and go back inside. I spend the day folding up clothes in the chest of drawers, putting blouses together, sorting panties according to everyday wear and the one them for going out, folding up the cotton house dress Tina sent me last month from America. I already tell her that I have enough, but every time she see one that she think I might like, she send it down with somebody coming to visit. So a stream of our friends always coming by, bringing me house dress from Sears or J.C. Penney. I know where they come from because of the tag. She take the price off, but leave the tag on. Maybe to show me that they're brand new. She's not sending me secondhand stuff. Not that I would ever think that. I wonder sometime if she's trying to tell me, check out these dresses, mommy. They're nothing compared to what you can stitch up from scratch. When I finish with the chest of drawers, I start on the closet, which is not in a bad condition since the things Albert did leave behind, bun and gone already. Is a hell of a fire light in the yard, even though the big flame them shooting up in the air didn't make me feel much better. Him clothes used to hang on one side and mine on the other side. Um, Now some of Tina clothes, things I make for her, hang where him shirt and pants used to be. Tina like to keep a few clothes at the house so that when she come home on holiday, she don't have to bring heavy suitcase. She moved to Florida only a few months after me and Albert separate. And when the divorce finalized, she asked me if I didn't want to come to America. But what I gonna do there? I don't want to be a burden on her. And she says she don't want to come back right now because when she was here, she was just boxing bread out of horse mouth. Couldn't get paid right for all her hard work. Now she making decent money in one of them town near Miami. Even if she have to get up at 6 and drive 1 hour to the school and 1 hour back. When we talk on the phone, she always telling me things about her students, how nearly every day police come and have to cart off one of them in handcuffs. I worry about her. But when I look at her clothes them in the closet, it make me feel like she's not gone forever. That one day she's going to come home again and things will go back to normal. Sometimes I tell her that she should call Albert too. He's still our father. But she says she don't feel like talking to him. Nothing I can do about that. So I'll stop
Mm.
there.
Well, what a way to start. Maybe you can talk to us about why you chose to begin there with this reading.
Uh, I like this character and I like her voice.
Mhm.
She's going through a tough time as well, but she keeps her sense of humor. And so it was kind of a random selection in a way,
Right.
but yeah, I do like this character.
No, it's beautiful. I mean, what one can kind of take from that is this question of what is it that we can make from scratch, right? Of course, we start off thinking and hearing certainly about clothing, right? Taking fabric, just bolts of fabric that may be of no interest to someone else, but how one can turn that into a dress. And if you turn it
Right.
into a dress, where do you wear that dress? Then it becomes a statement for that event. And then it becomes locked in as a memory. And every time you encounter that dress, you'll remember that event for good or for bad. So that question of what can one make from scratch? Clothing, yes, but you can also make cleanliness, right? You can
Right.
clean up a
Yeah.
space just on your own through your own body, and you can make a home.
True.
And a
True.
home is the space where you house all of those memories, and you can make love from scratch. So there's so much that's just wrapped up into that one chapter, and this way of extending that metaphor of what can one make from scratch. Maybe you can talk about what you make from scratch, right? To create
Right. Right.
characters, to create novels, poems, that's coming from somewhere in you. That's you scratching pen on
Mhm.
paper. What inspires you to write? How do you do it?
Oh, that is that's a deep question. That's an excellent question. I mean, you know, I also a hard thing to respond to because um, I often say I'm not an intellectual writer. I don't produce that much. I really write when things come. So
Mm,
it's perhaps more intuitive in a way. Um, it's you know it's these voices, and of course other writers have spoken of this. These voices that are in your head, and you can't get them out until you put them on paper or put them into the computer or whatever, until they have a life of their own
mm,
outside of you. And I was in a seminar this morning, and we were just talking about how once the book is finished, it goes into the world, and these characters as well go into the world, and they're no longer yours. They're related to you, but they're no longer yours. And so mainly it starts with the voices, you know,
mhm.
and sometimes it's a female voice, sometimes it's a male voice, sometimes it's an old woman's voice or an old man's voice.
Mhm.
I don't know. Can I say old these days? I'm not sure if
Of
that's
course, of course.
a
Well,
senior citizen's voice. I don't know.
an
I am
elder's voice.
an elder's voice. I'm one myself now. So yeah, and that is really how it starts.
Right, with a voice, and then you put flesh onto that voice through the process of building. Or does the voice tell you how the character looks and moves?
Not you. Well, when you hear the voice, you picture the character,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
But the thing with the way I approach writing is that I never know what these characters want to do
Mm,
eventually. And as I'm writing, of course, they take on a life of their own, and they do their own thing. I started with Chris for this book
mhm,
because I was at a workshop. Actually, I was painting flowers,
mhm.
and I started with Chris, and I didn't know how things would develop. I didn't know at the time the other characters like Feliciane, who is another artist. She came in the writing of the book. So yeah.
Nice. Well, maybe we can move to another reading.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
I'm hungry
Uh,
for more, and I'll keep playing my kalimba if you wish.
okay. Please do.
Is
It's
there a
a
reason? Is there, I know that you usually have accompaniment when you read, you prefer to. Why?
because I love music. I listen to music a lot, and in fact, sometimes when I'm painting, I put a CD on, or I'm streaming some music or whatever, and the
Mm,
music somehow inspires me. And we come from a musical culture.
yes.
I grew up with a lot of music, and so it's somehow maybe comforting to
Mm,
have music. And maybe we'll talk later. We can talk later about the the Jamericas, where we sometimes do readings with a jazz singer.
yes.
But yeah, but
Okay.
I'll go to chapter 7. I'll let you start with the music first.
All right.
And so this uh, chapter is about Miss Pretty. And Miss Pretty is she's another character in the book, and she's someone that we all know, I think, the mad woman who walks through the neighborhood, who might not be so mad in quotations after all. And so this chapter is about her. Uh, and it's called "It's Hot in July in Fur," because she wears a fur coat in the hot sun. Um, most days, the sun seemed determined to spite her, to smite her. to push her back to the coolness of her silent house. Before she had taken a dozen steps, she could usually feel the sweat coursing down her forehead, trickling down her back and creeping between her breasts. She mopped her face with a green and white plaid handkerchief she always carried, one that had belonged to her father. She could still picture her mother ironing his handkerchiefs every Sunday evening and folding them into neat squares. He'd had so many, but now there was only this one left, and she took it with her every morning and washed it every evening. She hung it on the line in the backyard beside her turban, white dress, and the fur coat. And by sunrise the next day, everything was dry and ready for the road, thanks to the heat. When it rained, she had to find another costume and another piece of cloth to wrap around her head to prevent the sun from frying her brains. Last night, it had poured as if a hurricane was on the way, and her clothes were dripping on the line this morning. She tried to find something else to wear, but nothing was suitable. It was impossible to go walking around in red or sky blue when one was in mourning, and black was suicide in the heat. So white was the only color that seemed right and correct under her coat. But she hadn't been able to find another white dress this morning, and the coat itself was sodden. She searched the two wardrobes and the chest of drawers, only to find that everything looked and smelled moldy, with unpleasant furry white spots. She realized that one day she'd have to sort through all the clothes and throw some things away. One day, when she had the time to sit down and listen to her own thoughts. She'd had to abandon the search because the sun was coming up and she needed to be on the road before the heat became too fierce. She forced herself to forget about the dress, about the coat, and it was such a pleasure to feel the air on her bare skin as she stepped out of the house. She inhaled deeply, enjoying the perfume of the morning glory flowers that her mother had planted so many years ago in the front garden. She felt as if she were floating. It took no effort at all to walk up the slope to Victoria Street, and the sun was kind today after the nighttime rain. Its light was gentle as it restrained its violence for now. She could hear people waking up and moving about in their houses as she passed by on the road. Miss Vera was already out on her veranda when Miss Pretty reached the corner of Victoria Street. But rather than "Good morning, sweetheart," Miss Vera, but rather than the "Good morning, sweetheart," Miss Vera always gave, Miss Pretty instead heard a strangled "Lord God have mercy" as she walked on. She could feel the eyes boring into her exposed back, even as the neighborhood's brainless mangy dogs began their irritating cacophony. "Miss Pretty, sweetheart, come back. Don't go walking around like that," she heard Miss Vera yell after her, the woman's urgent voice competing with the dog's barking. But she was just hitting her stride now, feeling the blood pumping through her body. "I'll walk until you come back to me, until you're returned to me." One foot in front of the other, a fast walk, just short of a run. She was aware of others coming out of their houses, some rushing up to their gates to gaze at her. She saw flashes of male grins and felt the women's frowns. She heard the shouts of, "Go and put some clothes on, Miss Pretty." She ignored them and kept walking and was surprised when a man ran up and held her by the arm. Soon, a woman joined him and took her other arm, and they both began draping a sheet round her body. As they did so, Miss Pretty heard anguished shouts, but didn't realize the words were coming from her own mouth. Then she closed her eyes and said nothing more, allowing herself to be led back up the road to Miss Vera's house. She let Miss Vera take her by the hand and lead her inside. If you wanted to borrow a frock, why you didn't come and ask me? Miss Vera asked. You can't go around walking naked as the day you were born. You know, your mother wouldn't like it, believe me. I can make you any frock you like. Miss Pretty didn't answer. She watched as Miss Vera went to her kitchen for a few minutes and came back with a steaming plate of boiled bananas, ackee, and saltfish. Here, have some breakfast before you start your marathon. The day is still young. Miss Pretty took the plate and she felt herself smiling as she started to eat. It had been so long since she tasted anything this good, not since her mother passed. When she looked up, she noticed that Miss Vera's eyes were wet.
Mm. Oh, Miss Pretty, Miss Pretty, Miss Pretty. I wonder if we can talk a bit about madness and think about madness in the Caribbean, madness in Jamaica. When you were reading that chapter and we're able to envision Miss Pretty moving through the space, certainly we might recall Jean Binta Breeze, right?
Right.
We might
Yes.
recall, that poem, that beautiful dub poem, Mad Woman Raving,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
What can we say here about madness and how delicately you treated it here in A Million Aunties?
Well, I think we all know it's an issue, and we could talk about historical trauma. We can talk about all the things that cause mental illness in the Caribbean. I mean, I am not an expert on this. I'm just a writer, write about this. There's there's a book called what is it called again? Madness in Caribbean Writing.
Yes.
One of the editors is Evelyn O'Callaghan.
Yes.
Yeah, and Benedict Ledan from the University of Liège. And so there's this whole book that talks about, because it's a theme, right? It's a theme in Caribbean literature. This and the whole trope of the mad person, the mentally ill person. It's something that many of us have written about.
Right.
And this is because I think because it is so present. Yeah, it's something that we all see, that we all experience. I mean, when I'm home, without fail, we'll come across somebody. Sometimes it's somebody just walking nude down the street, and I think within our extended families, we all know of people who have struggled with various issues.
Right, absolutely. And it's, I guess, how delicately we handle that, right? So if we're all familiar with all observing madness in our various communities, how are we responding to it? And I think what's beautiful about your work is that it allows us a space for interrogation, but with loads of compassion, right? So we gain understanding that can help to increase our own empathy when walking through and communicating with members of our own communities. Something you said struck me and makes me want to ask this question, which is, where was home for you in Jamaica? And of course, if you can talk about what motivated your departure, right, to leave Jamaica. Do you consider yourself as having multiple homes? And I'll stop there and then I'll see if there's a follow-up question. But talk about home, your many homes, and why you have so many homes.
Well, I think I have only one home, and that's Jamaica. And I know, because I have traveled around quite a bit and been out, I've been living in France for 13 years now. It's funny to say that I have only one home, but in my head and in my heart, that is true. I have, my home is Jamaica, and it's it's something to think about, being in another space physically and emotionally and mentally, being at home. And this happens all the time. I mean, we have a small Jamaican community in France. And you know, we have this annual picnic where we all come together, well, several annual picnics where we all come together and we share food and so forth and so on. And this is sort of recreating home, you know, in a way. But you know, when you are, let's say, when you're somebody who moves around, it's really, one shouldn't think that you find home where you go, because you're always an outsider. And the seminar I mentioned this morning, I was on a panel where we were talking about just that, about the feeling of being an outsider, an eternal outsider, and how to embrace that and how to find joy in that somehow. So yes, to come back to your question, I know this is a long roundabout answer, but I have one home. Although, you know, with my family, we've lived in various places and we have enjoyed these places. But home, yeah. I don't think we have the time to discuss and to examine what home really means.
Right.
You know?
I think that's great. I mean, and especially given this recent reading that you did of Madness, I'm thinking now about Jean Rhys's novel, right? And I'm thinking about how that character, Bertha Antoinette, perhaps also saw herself as having one home, right? And that home was in the Caribbean.
Yes.
And her removal from that space and placement in England is what unlocked a kind of madness, right? Because she was so far from that home. And to use the phrase you just used, she became this eternal outsider that she couldn't make sense of, right? So it's almost as if it's our responsibility to find peace in being that eternal outsider.
Exactly. And I think that, you know, as the paper I presented this morning, just looking at the various ways that you can find that kind of peace that you can enjoy, if not enjoy, but embrace being the outsider.
Right.
And one of the joys is the connections that we make, right? And for me, it's sort of like finding Jamaicans wherever we go. So you know, recently I noticed that there was this young Jamaican woman tweeting, I think it was either Beijing or Tokyo, and sort of embracing her difference, you know, in Asia. And we lived in Singapore for 8 years.
Okay.
Again, Singapore was a wonderful place. We liked it very much, but it was a temporary space. So I wouldn't say it was home, you know. And that you're always an outsider, and you have to, I think, know where you come from, in a sense, to stay rooted. I'm sorry, there's the door keeps slamming. But.
No worries, it's the ancestors, they're with us too. No, that makes lots of sense. It makes lots of sense. And it's just another way that, you know, we can think about and interrogate this text is to question home, right? The first thing that we said in response to your reading of that chapter, The Trees, is the making of home, right? And the significance of doing that. What does it afford us? What kinds of comfort does it give us? And a home we think about as a kind of structured building, but maybe for Miss Pretty, it's that fur coat, right? Yes. That becomes a home in itself. Can you talk about the choice for a fur coat? Because certainly that will make a reader say, this is not right. You know, you can't be wearing a fur coat in Jamaica, climate change hasn't gotten that bad yet. We're going to have icy days here. So let's talk about the fur coat if we can.
I think the fur coat was necessary because I had started writing snippets of, the chapter with Felician where she was painting on the fur coats.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one thing led to the other. So Miss Pretty had to wear fur. Or, I mean, maybe I could have made it canvas or something else, but yeah, I wanted her to be in fur so that the whole animal rights thing at the gallery would come into play.
Right.
And that joke, I mean, maybe it started with that joke because I heard that joke a long time ago about, and I'm not going to give the joke away.
We'll just say that joke
about somebody spray painting the fur coat that someone was wearing. So,
right.
Yeah. Maybe it started from there. I'm not sure.
Right. Sometimes it's hard to trace back the genesis of some of these ideas.
Exactly.
This is the joy of the writing process. Okay, so there are some comments coming in here, and I would like to tell you that Susan Goff is very happy that you read The Trees. She was actually hoping that you would do so, so thank you.
Thank you, Susan.
Yes, and I think there was another comment here that I'm not sure who shared this comment, but an audience member here has said that they are very much delighted by this chapter, and what they love about its 12 pages is how it tells a whole lifetime all about these relationships, tragedy, pain, healing in such a gentle and powerful way.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for that comment.
So maybe we roll right into the next reading.
Okay, so I'm just jumping from chapter to chapter, okay?
Right.
So let's see. Should I do chapter 3?
I see no objections to you doing chapter 3. Okay. There's no one saying in the YouTube that no, not chapter 3 of all the chapters, not chapter.
I'll read chapter 3 from the other book, just to because this is the UK and European edition from Dialogue Book. So just to show.
And the cover is beautiful. Could you hold it up? Gorgeous. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
So chapter 3 is titled "They Like the Art," and this is told from Chris's point of view. And Chris is one of the main characters. He's the artist in the story who goes home, goes to his mother's homeland, and stays with another main character who is Miss Della. So they like the art. He's been painting. He's been painting for a long time at Miss Della's house. I never had so many visitors in my life, Miss Della said to Chris one morning as they were having breakfast. She'd made roast breadfruit, plantains, and mackerel, and he felt he was eating in the morning what he should have been having for dinner, but he was getting used to it. He just remarked on how nice it was that people kept dropping by to see her, but her burst of laughter made him realize it was his presence that was attracting the visitors. Before, people would just shout out hello and go about their business, cleaning up their house and thing, but now everybody want to come in and waste my time chatting. Oh, sorry, Chris chuckled, surprising himself. He thought his laughter had gone for good. No, don't worry about it, darling, Miss Della reassured him. It's not every day they can come see man painting flowers like you. And look how everybody's saying how much they like the paintings. We's a nation of art lovers, She gazed round the walls of the kitchen at all the paintings he had put up and murmured, "Them really do brighten up the place and lift your spirit. That's why everybody passing through now, like my house done museum. Even Miss Pretty coming in to look. First time she been inside. Although, maybe she think it's Stephen come back. Poor soul." Fritz glanced at his artwork and gave a rueful smile. He still wasn't where he wanted to be. Yes, the things look more like flowers now compared with when he'd first got here. But that final aspect, the lightness of touch, was still missing. The stream of people coming by and making their encouraging sounds had spurred him on, though. He'd got to know them all. Miss Vera, who was a dressmaker and lived in the town, although she kept her shell of a house on the hill. She was constantly making jokes, but her eyes held loss, something he recognized. He'd given her a painting on one of her visits, and she'd bustled away so he wouldn't see her crying. Mr. Jordan, the citrus farmer, who he felt sure had a soft spot for Miss Della. Chris teased her about it sometimes. And Miss Pretty, who walked the streets in her faded fur coat and hardly ever spoke. Her eyes were a muddy river carrying years of tangled thoughts. Her passage always unsettled him and set the dogs barking. One day, she had come into the yard, ignoring the animals, and watched him as he painted. Then she had walked into the house uninvited and examined the works on the walls. "Do you know my son?" he'd asked before leaving, and he'd shaken his head dumbly. "He's a good artist too," she said, staring at and beyond Chris. She passed by every day after that, stopping to see what he was doing, the damp animal odor of the fur coat overwhelming. But she never spoke to him again. Now, he needed a break. I'll stop there. Yeah.
Yes, 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 yes. Thank you again. Okay, so Chris, we know Chris has been through a lot.
He has.
Chris has been through a lot. And we see, goodness, I'm not giving things away, right? We see that in your writing of Chris, art is therapy, right? Is art therapy for you in any way?
Oh, definitely, definitely. I think, do you mean visual art or do you mean art in general?
All art, literary art, visual art. Does art become therapy? I mean, you talked earlier about expressing or exercising, X4 with the O in it, exercising voices when you create characters, right? The voices in your head and you need to get the voice out. But what about the kind of therapeutic work that comes from the creative process for you, whether it's painting, whether it's a visual art or the creation of characters? Can you talk about that?
Yes, certainly. I think it's art in all its guises, if you like, or all its formats. For instance, when I'm painting, which I don't do so often anymore, it's almost like being a kid again. It's mixing the paint, putting it on the canvas, seeing something come into being. And somehow, sometimes that's even more satisfying than writing, because the writing process is well, the publishing process is quite long. I mean, you write, you edit, you send it off, you get accepted or you get rejected, then it takes so long for the book to be published and so forth and so on. Whereas painting is more immediate. Same thing with pottery. And maybe that is of the various things, that I've dabbled in. Maybe pottery was the most therapeutic, getting your hands dirty and actually forming something from clay. Right. So definitely there is that. And just coming back to the music that we've all grown up with. And maybe I shouldn't say all, but most of us have grown up with music in the Caribbean. And I mean, it can be a gray day here now, and I'll put Burning Spear on, or and we're talking about dub poetry. I mean, we both contributed to the recent issue
the Journal of West
on
Indian
dub
Literature.
poetry.
Yes.
right? The Journal of West Indian Literature, and just that listening to dub
Mm.
somehow can just change your mood, and you know, in our article, we talk about dub being a kind of nirvana in a way,
Yes.
taking you to a different place. And yeah, I think that can be true in a broader sense for um sorry, for art.
For
Yes.
art.
Yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And certainly when we encounter each of these characters, and for I think most of the chapters, right? Each chapter is giving us a different character's perspective, right?
Yes. Yes.
Which again helps us to kind of step outside of our own minds as readers. So we experience this nirvana, not only in music and not only, of course, when we dig our hands into making pottery or gardening for that matter, but then also in the process of reading, that we can step outside of ourselves and maybe encounter other versions of ourselves in the text, right? Where a character that might not look like us, but has certainly
Yes.
lived some part of the life that we have lived as well,
Right. Right.
right? So
Yes.
for all of these ways that we might have experienced loss or tragedy, we can encounter this through another character, and maybe to help ourselves make sense of this. Um, I know we said we were going to hold the Q&A for the end, but it's kind of fun just bringing in the comments and
Sure.
questions
Sure. Sure.
as they come up, because they're surfacing for a
Okay.
reason. So Winsome
Yeah.
Hudson, hello Winsome,
Hello.
says,
Hi. Hi.
she's asking, is Alecia, the artist, considering painting a scene with all the characters in one panel? Winsome is imagining such, and it would be lovely. And I couldn't agree more.
Yes, I'm sorry. I didn't quite get that. So you mean doing a painting
Of
of
the
the characters?
characters in A Million Aunties and putting them on one canvas at one time.
Oh, wow. That's a great idea. I never thought of that.
That is
That
a beautiful idea.
Yeah, you're giving me work there.
But it's immediate work, and you love that gratification, right? Of being able to do
Exactly.
it.
But no, that's a really nice idea.
I
Yeah,
think it's a great
I'll do
idea.
it.
And we could have a Zoom meeting to watch you make it. No pressure, no pressure. No, I think that's a really wonderful idea. Have you actually ever put different artistic modes together? You talked about listening to music while creating something else at the same time,
Right.
but have you ever mixed your works?
Just in the sense of doing the book covers, I did the cover for Sweetheart,
Mm-hmm.
for instance, and so I also the cover of Stories from Yard. That's one
Right,
of my
right.
paintings,
Okay.
and now I can't remember if the short story based on that dress in Stories from Yard. It's what was the short story again? Gone to the Dogs.
Yes, yes.
Um, I can't remember if the story came first or if the painting came first, actually.
Hmm.
The painting might have come first.
Right.
So, so
So
yeah,
they,
so sometimes things
right,
feed off.
right.
Yeah.
One craft can feed another. Okay, so I'm looking at the time, and I know that our lunch hour, dinner hour, chat and chew is coming to an end. So you have one more reading, though.
Okay, shall I make it short then?
I guess so, because we still have to answer that fantastic question of the Jamaricas and how music feeds in.
Right. Well, we can
So
discuss that another time.
no problem. There's always more. So let's go with our final reading. Oh my goodness.
Okay. So
Okay.
I'll just do a short reading. This is from chapter 2, and it's from the point of view of Chris's father.
Okay. And I just want to
Um,
encourage everyone to just any questions and comments, please load them in now. We only have about 10 more minutes gathered here together. Okay. So here we
okay.
are, chapter 2.
So
Chris's father.
yeah. So Chris's father also is suffering from trauma because he was in the Vietnam War. And so I should mention that his father is American and his his mother is Jamaican. And so this is from the point of view of
Herb.
Of the father, of
Right.
the dad.
Herb.
So it's funny how you can go along for years, get up in the morning, go to work, come home in the evening, eat, watch TV, never suspecting a thing. You stop eating rice and all's fine and good. Then, out of the blue, you start waking up at night in a sweat, shouting until you're hoarse, frightening the daylights out of your wife and kid. It was always the same dream, and it made me ashamed that I wasn't strong enough to blot it out. I'm a tall man. Chris gets his height from me, and I still had the strong arms and shoulders like when I played ball in high school and that first year of college. But I would wake up yelling, crying, shaking like a little kid. I'm in the dark, hiding behind a tree. I know I'm surrounded, although I can't make out the men approaching. I can only feel their presence, feel them drawing close. I push my body hard against the tree, trying to be one with it, disappear inside it. And all of a sudden, they're there with machetes, and they start chopping, cutting me into pieces. I welcome the blows. This can't go on forever. I know I'm dying, although it's not coming fast enough. Then, just as I'm about to lose consciousness, the sun comes out, and I'm still alive, whole. When I look out from behind the tree, I see them, the men who had been hacking at me and then weren't. They're now dragging old men, old women, little children from huts and chopping them like pieces of wood. I start running towards them as the boom, boom of shots mixes in with the cries. My own screams blast me away. The dream started coming more frequently around October 83, when the military went down to Grenada. In our years of marriage up till then, it was the first time I'd seen Eileen jerked out of her America's on the whole a good place attitude. It was now, your country, Herb. Your country doing this and your country doing that. Her anger boiled over when she overheard someone at the mall saying, "We going down there to kick some ass." Oh boy, she didn't find that funny at all. She who had become more American than me. She let loose a stream of patois in the mall, which they probably didn't understand. Lucky for her, maybe. She still hadn't learned not to mess with crackers. The doctor said it was all the images on TV and in the papers that were making things worse. I asked him for pills, but he recommended that I hold off for a while. The damn fool. The sleepless nights were making me irritable, and Eileen was suffering too. We were bickering nonstop. And yes, it was mostly my fault. One evening, I came home and looked through the refrigerator for something to snack on, but each plastic box contained only the sticky crap. I threw the rice all over the kitchen floor, and I didn't end with that. I cleaned out the refrigerator by throwing every bottle, every vegetable, every carton onto the tiles. At first, Eileen tried to stop me. Then she and Chris left me alone until I got tired and went to bed. The next morning, I found it all cleaned up. That December, she left for Kaya Bay with Chris for 2 weeks, saying I needed some time and space to myself. I never told her how much I missed them, how 14 days seemed like 14 months. Shall I stop now?
Yes, you can. Ooh, okay, so there is
Sorry, I
her.
should have ended on a lighter note, probably.
We will work with this because this is life, right? This is what we do. We work through life. So Herb is Chris's dad, and you certainly put flesh on those bones and gave a body and an entire life to that voice that clearly invaded your mind in a very heavy way. And I think ending there really does kind of bring us into, full circle. This idea of the eternal outsider. Of course, we think about this text and think about Caribbean literature. you're a Jamaican author. We think about all of these things. Chris, of course, is returning to Jamaica to do this work and to find his muse again, right? Or to release in a way that he was unable to do so in outside of Jamaica.
Right.
But I think it's remarkable, right, that early on in this novel, you have this African American character, right? The father is a Black man from America who also feels that he is an eternal outsider, right? And how he comes to it is curious, because it's not just that America and moving around the spaces of America make him feel as an outsider, as a Black man in perhaps a white man's country, but there's a kind of mental outsiderness that happens. It's invading his dreams, right? To be outside of the events of Vietnam in terms of time, but then trapped in that space. You've created mental health questions. You pose those questions through your writing, and you interrogate them and tease them out in your writing so that we see multiple kinds of disturbance, right? Disturbance to one's peace, riddled throughout this text in unexpected ways that are in a lot of ways related to America and American politics.
Right.
I mean, I posted on Twitter that there are a million reasons to come to this discussion, conversation, reading with you today. And within this text, there are a million ways that we are making sense of life and trying to pull all the fragments together. Political reasons, family reasons, health reasons. I mean, we can just make the list longer and longer. What called to you to make you write this character, Herb?
Well, I was in the States when there was the invasion of Grenada, and I had a family member who was in the military, and so I started thinking, and this doesn't have that much to do with the character, but what if this family member got sent to the Caribbean as part of an invading
American,
force,
right?
right? And so that worry and that concern, I guess it surfaced years later in this character.
Right.
So yeah, I remember being really very concerned when that was taking place. And that thing of, I mean, normally I don't write about my own experiences. I try to keep that distance, but this was something I heard of people saying, we're going to go and kick some ass, and that
Right.
has stayed with me all these years. And so, these things come back. They somehow make their way into the writing. And
Right.
yeah.
Right. So we're getting some questions in here about your writing process and perhaps how long it took you to write this book. This question's coming from Susie Main. So I hope you can answer those questions and maybe speak to the fact that you are also an instructor of writing, right? So that you have a process, and then perhaps you also teach a process. So can you maybe take that question both ways?
Right. That is interesting the way you put it, because I write the way I write,
Right.
but when I'm teaching, I have to do the theoretical approach. So you have to talk about plot and character and setting and so forth, and explain how an aspiring writer can make those aspects stronger, for instance. But I don't necessarily, I shouldn't say this, but I don't necessarily follow my own advice. I mean, and the only thing I say to people who take the courses is that you have to do whatever works for you. If it's better for you to make an outline and to plot things that way, to say, okay, this is A, this is B, this is C, this is how the story is going to go. If that works for you, go ahead, do it. If you are more the kind of intuitive writer where, yes, these voices are in your head and you need to get rid of them, and you just let them do their own thing. If that works for you, you do that as well.
Right.
So yeah, it's but to come back to how long the book take, and I don't want to keep going on about this, about losing work, but the book took more than 5 years, and that was because my with the first draft, let's say, and bits and pieces, my laptop, and well, there was a burglary, and we all lost computer equipment, and so that disappeared, and it was it took longer than it should have, I suppose.
Okay. No, I mean, to lose a part of your creativity, or no, to lose a creation, and the various other creations that you had on that computer, I'm sure was a bit devastating. It's traumatic, no?
Yeah, well, it was at the time. It was at the time. You can look back and laugh now and say,
yes,
okay.
yes, because the book is here.
Right, exactly.
We've all got it. And we are at time, so we will have to do this again. That's all this tells me, is that we'll have to do this again, because you read beautifully, of course, you write wonderfully and provocatively, and we're all grateful to you for doing this work of sharing A Million Aunties with us here in this forum. I just want to thank you again, and thank everyone for joining in. And one way or another, we'll be back together again to share. So thank you for that. I see there's one comment here where Marta Fernandez was gladly surprised to see a character from Sweetheart, Dulcie Evers, appear briefly in A Million Aunties. And it was great to hear you talk about your painting and your influences. So I think we're all very grateful to you.
Thank you.
Thank you on behalf of the Department of Literatures and English at the University of the West Indies Mona campus. Let's do this again. And to all that are watching, please join us again. In fact, you can join us sooner than you realize. We are having an event on May 9th, which is a book launch. Nope, just kidding, it's not a book launch. It's the 15th Edward Baugh Distinguished Lecture. So please join us for a talk titled The Missing Mid-Century West Indian Woman Writer and Another Quarrel with History. It will be delivered by Professor Alison Donnell of University of East Anglia. So I do hope you can join us on that day. And then a little bit later, mid-May, May 17th, we'll have a book launch in the same venue of being through our YouTube channel. We will have an event that is a partnership with IGDS, and which is the Institute for Gender and Development Studies here at the University of the West Indies, and the Center for Caribbean and Diaspora Studies at Goldsmiths University in London, where we will have the editors Suzanne Scaife and Leith Dunn presenting their text, African Caribbean Women Interrogating Diaspora, Post-Diaspora. So I hope that in giving those titles, you see that there are connections, and there will be connections to make to today's conversation and reading with Alecia McKenzie, author of A Million Aunties. I'm Dr. Isis Samaj Hall. I thank you and you and you and you and you and you for joining us today. We say goodbye.
Thank you. Thank you, Isis.
Thank you so much.
And thanks for the music. Thank you for the music.
I tried my very best. Okay, take care, everyone. Take care.
Bye. Bye.